Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Awesome. Well, today we're going to be talking about European cybersecurity. And more specifically, we're going to be looking at how Spain is implementing the NIS2 Directive.
Ooh, that's a big one.
It is a big one, yeah. And, to help us unpack all of this, our main source is an interview with Luis Fernandez, who's a leading cybersecurity expert and editor of the Spanish cybersecurity magazine, SIC.
He always has such interesting insights.
He does. And, one of the big questions that he raised that really stood out to me was whether this whole new wave of regulations is going to be a blessing or a burden for folks on the front lines of cyber defense, like, our listeners out there.
No, that's a key question, and I think Luis Fernandez's perspective is especially valuable here, given, the unique challenges that Spain faces. And, let's be honest, their track record with EU directives hasn't always been stellar.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, they've got, over 50 EU directives that are still pending after 5 years. So, is NIS2 just going to be added to that pile?
It's a real concern, and it kind of speaks to this broader issue that Luis Fernandez highlighted, which is the lack of a centralized cybersecurity agency in Spain.
Right. He actually had this really interesting analogy.
Oh, yeah. He compared it to like a sheriff, the FBI, and a helicopter all showing up at a crime scene and all trying to be in charge.
Yeah. Imagine trying to coordinate a response in that kind of chaos.
Right. Talk about a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. So before we get too deep into the weeds of, Spain's specific situation, maybe let's take a step back and just unpack what NIS2 is actually all about. Because, from what I gathered, it's basically aimed at, beefing up cybersecurity across these critical sectors within the EU, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it mandates these stricter security measures, right? But I think the real game changer with NIS2 is the emphasis on accountability. So, organizations across a much wider range of sectors are actually going to have to, prove that they're taking cybersecurity seriously.
Oh, interesting.
And this accountability even extends to the C-suite. So, even the executives are going to need to have a deeper understanding of cyber risks.
Oh, wow. So no more pleading with management to take basic security hygiene seriously.
Hopefully not. It should be a big relief for all those cybersecurity professionals who've been, banging that drum for years.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I mean, think about it, right? NIS2 could finally be your ticket to getting that, vulnerability management system you've been pushing for, or, maybe finally getting the budget for proper security awareness training for your staff.
That's a great point. I mean, it's finally giving cybersecurity professionals the leverage they need to actually make some real progress.
Exactly. Because, for too long, cybersecurity has been seen as this IT problem, right? When in reality, it's a business risk. And NIS2 really drives that point home.
Yeah, that's a good point. But, Luis Fernandez, he also injected a dose of skepticism, didn't he?
Oh, yeah, of course. He's not one to sugarcoat things.
Right. He questioned whether Spain, with its history of kind of dragging its feet on EU directives, can actually, implement this kind of complex framework effectively.
Yeah, he's right to be skeptical. I mean, Spain's past performance with these EU directives doesn't exactly inspire confidence. And without a centralized agency to kind of steer the ship, it's easy to imagine things getting bogged down in all this bureaucratic red tape.
Oh, for sure. I mean, he painted a pretty vivid picture of the potential for confusion and conflicting priorities. It's you finally have this powerful tool to improve security, but you're not even sure how to use it or who's in charge of what.
Yeah, exactly. It really underscores the importance of clear communication, right?
Right.
Coordination and strong leadership. Otherwise, the potential benefits of NIS2 could just get completely lost in this implementation maze.
Okay, so we've got this tension, right, between the potential of NIS2 to elevate cybersecurity and then these very real challenges of getting it off the ground in a country like Spain. What stands out to you as the biggest hurdle?
I think for me it really comes back to that lack of a centralized authority figure, the conductor of the cybersecurity orchestra, so to speak.
All right.
Without that clear leadership and direction, even the best intentions can just get completely lost in translation.
Yeah, it's everyone's playing a different tune.
Exactly.
Now, while Spain's kind of grappling with these implementation challenges, the EU is also pushing forward with some pretty intriguing new technologies.
Oh, yeah. There's always something new on the horizon.
Always, always. And one that Luis Fernandez highlighted was this digital wallet, which, I mean, it sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi film.
It does, doesn't it?
Imagine being able to like prove your age or your identity online without having to like dig out your physical ID.
I know, it's a pretty revolutionary concept. So basically, the EU's vision is to create this like secure and standardized digital identity platform. You can think of it like a one-stop shop for managing your entire online identity.
Yeah.
So you can use it to like access government services, open bank accounts, confirm your age for online purchases, all within this one digital wallet.
Okay, that does sound incredibly convenient, but I don't know, doesn't that raise some red flags about privacy? I mean, putting all your eggs in one digital basket feels a little risky, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, you're right to be cautious, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, there are definitely concerns about data security and privacy with any centralized system, right? But the EU's approach to the digital wallet really emphasizes user control and data minimization. So, like, you get to decide what information you share and with whom.
Oh, okay. So it's not like some like Orwellian system where Big Brother's like tracking your every move.
No, not exactly. The EU is really pushing for a privacy-first approach here, where like individuals retain control over their data.
Okay, that's good to hear.
And it's actually a stark contrast to some of the other digital identity initiatives that are out there, which Luis Fernandez also touched on. He mentioned this project called WorldCoin, where they're actually scanning people's irises to create unique digital IDs.
Wait, hold up. Scanning people's eyeballs. That's a bit unsettling, to be honest. That sounds like something out of a dystopian novel.
It's definitely raised some eyebrows, yeah.
Yeah.
Critics argue that it could be like a slippery slope towards mass surveillance and, potential abuse, especially in the hands of, let's just say, less than democratic government. So it really raises these fundamental questions about, like, who controls our digital identities and what safeguards are in place to protect our privacy.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we're at this kind of crossroads with digital identity. On the one hand, you've got this vision of, like, a more secure and convenient online experience. But then on the other hand, there are these very real concerns about privacy, data control, and the potential for misuse.
Exactly. It's like this classic dilemma of the digital age, right? We're constantly trying to find that balance between like convenience and security, innovation, and protecting our fundamental rights. And it seems like these choices are only becoming more critical as technology keeps evolving at such a rapid pace.
Yeah, no kidding. It's a lot to keep up with.
It is.
Now, Luis Fernandez, he also pointed out that, this whole wave of new technologies is creating this whole new landscape for cybersecurity professionals, right? He even used the term turf wars to describe how, like, traditional roles are blurring as new specialties emerge.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic because as cybersecurity becomes more intertwined with things like data protection, artificial intelligence, and even things like neuroscience, the lines between those different domains are becoming less clear-cut. So we're seeing the rise of these like hybrid roles that require a blend of like legal expertise, technical expertise, ethical expertise, all of that.
So it's not just about being a techie anymore.
Not at all.
You need to be like a multi-hyphenate, right? Like cybersecurity/lawyer/ethicist, something like that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, well, he actually mentioned a couple of interesting new job titles, like the Vigilant and the Callow. What exactly do those roles entail? Right,
so the Vigilant, as Luis Fernandez described it, is kind of like a specialist who's really focused on proactive threat hunting and analysis. So they're constantly on the lookout for emerging threats, sifting through like massive amounts of data to identify patterns and like try to anticipate attacks before they actually happen.
Wow, that sounds pretty intense.
Yeah, it's definitely a high-pressure role. It requires a deep understanding of both like the technical landscape, but also, the attacker's mindset. You got to be able to think like the enemy, basically.
Okay, and what about the Callow? What makes that one unique?
So the Callow is more of a bridge between like legal teams and incident responders. So they ensure that an organization's response to a cyber incident is both effective, but also like fully compliant with all the relevant laws and regulations.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of like having a legal eagle on your incident response team.
Yeah, pretty much. So imagine a data breach, right? The Callow would be the one who helps you navigate the legal complexities of like data notification requirements, evidence preservation, working with law enforcement, all of that.
Got it. Yeah, that seems like a really valuable asset in today's environment where, data breaches are becoming increasingly common and the legal ramifications are like getting more and more complex.
Absolutely. And it just highlights how the cybersecurity profession is evolving beyond just, technical expertise. You need to be able to communicate effectively, understand these legal and ethical considerations, and think strategically about risk management.
It sounds like cybersecurity is becoming less about being like a lone wolf hacker in a dark room and more about being like a team player with a broad range of skills and knowledge.
Definitely. It's shifting towards a more collaborative and holistic approach where different disciplines all have to come together to address these, multifaceted challenges of cybersecurity.
Okay, and this evolution, I mean, it's only going to accelerate, right? As technology continues to advance and the threat landscape gets even more sophisticated.
Yeah, it's a constant race to stay ahead of the curve.
Speaking of technological advancements, we can't ignore the elephant in the room, right? Artificial intelligence. It's already playing a major role in cybersecurity, both as a tool for defenders and also, unfortunately, as a weapon for attackers.
AI is definitely a game changer. But as you said, it's a double-edged sword.
Mm-hmm.
So on the one hand, AI can help us analyze these massive amounts of data, automate a lot of these tedious tasks, and detect threats much more efficiently. So imagine an AI system that can identify like a phishing attack in real time, even before it reaches your inbox.
That would be amazing.
I know, right? That's the kind of potential we're talking about. But then on the flip side, attackers are also using AI to develop much more potent malware, craft these super convincing phishing campaigns, and even create like deepfakes that can deceive and manipulate people.
Oh, wow. So it's like an arms race where both sides are constantly trying to outmaneuver each other using these increasingly powerful AI tools.
It is. And it makes the whole cybersecurity landscape much more complex and unpredictable.
Okay, so it's not just about building better firewalls and intrusion detection systems anymore.
Nope. It's about understanding how AI is changing the game on both sides. And it's about developing new strategies and technologies that can counter these new AI-powered threats.
So it requires a whole different way of thinking, right?
Totally. It's a much more adaptive and proactive approach to cybersecurity.
And it probably requires a deeper understanding of AI itself, right? Like cybersecurity professionals can't just be experts in, networks and code. They need to have some level of AI literacy as well.
Absolutely. The cybersecurity professionals of the future will need to be fluent in the language of AI. They need to understand its capabilities, its limitations, and its potential impact on both the offensive and defensive sides of cybersecurity.
Wow, this is all pretty mind-blowing stuff. We've gone from discussing like bureaucratic hurdles in Spain to imagining these like AI-powered cyber battles.
I know, it's a lot to process, but it just goes to show how dynamic and rapidly evolving this field of cybersecurity really is. And it highlights why it's so crucial to, stay informed, stay curious, and just be willing to adapt as the landscape continues to shift.
Couldn't agree more. And, before we get too lost in this world of futuristic cyber threats, Luis Fernandez, he offered this really grounding reminder, which is that even with all these, technological advancements, sometimes the simplest attacks are still the most effective. He actually used the example of malicious Excel macros.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic.
Yeah, it's a technique that's been around for decades, but it continues to catch people out.
It's a sobering reminder that even as technology evolves, human psychology remains a major vulnerability.
It's like that old saying, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. No matter how sophisticated our, security systems are, a single click on a malicious link or misplaced trust in a seemingly harmless email can bring the whole thing crashing down.
That happens all the time, unfortunately. And it just underscores the importance of, cybersecurity awareness training, and not just for IT professionals, but for everyone.
Right, because in the end, it often comes down to that human element, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Humans are often the weakest link in the security chain. It's interesting to think about how the role of the CISO is evolving, right alongside all these technological advancements we were just talking about. Luis Fernandez really emphasized how important it is for them to become more integrated into the business side of things.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense when you think about it. Cybersecurity isn't just about, firewalls and intrusion detection systems anymore. It's really about understanding, the organization's overall risk profile and then aligning security practices with business objectives and being able to communicate effectively with senior management about the impact of cyber threats.
He used a really great analogy to illustrate this point. He said that CISOs need to be able to translate all that all that technical jargon into business terms.
Yeah.
Like, it's not enough to just go to the CEO and say, hey, we need to patch this vulnerability. You need to be able to explain to them, why that vulnerability poses a specific risk to the business, how it could impact revenue or maybe their reputation, and what the cost of a potential breach could actually be.
Right. So you're saying they need to be able to kind of like quantify cyber risk in a way that resonates with those business leaders who are, a lot of times they're just focused on the bottom line.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's about making cybersecurity a business issue, not just an IT issue.
Okay, so it sounds like, the modern CISO needs to be a bit of a chameleon, right?
Yeah.
They're able to adapt to different audiences and communicate effectively at all these different levels of the organization.
Yeah, and not just be a good communicator, but also be proactive.
Okay.
He was saying that it's not enough to just react to incidents as they happen.
Mm-hmm.
You really need to be, constantly on the lookout for new vulnerabilities, new attack techniques, new ways that attackers are trying to exploit weaknesses.
So it's about shifting from like a reactive mindset to a proactive one.
Exactly. It's about anticipating those threats, building resilience, and creating a culture of security awareness throughout the organization.
And that kind of brings us back to the human element, which Luis Fernandez, he emphasized again and again throughout this interview.
Yeah, he kept hammering that point home.
He believes that, even with all the sophisticated technology at our disposal, human psychology is still a major vulnerability.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he gave the example of those malicious Excel macros.
Yeah, the class.
A technique that's been around forever, but it still manages to trick people.
Yeah, all the time. Why is that? Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's because attackers are really good at preying on our natural tendencies, right? Like our curiosity, our desire to be helpful, our fear of missing out.
Yeah.
They craft these messages that play on our emotions and completely bypass our rational thinking.
Totally. So it's like they know how to like hack our brains. And that's why that cybersecurity awareness training is so important, not just for IT professionals, but for everyone who uses technology.
Yeah, it's really about empowering people, right?
Yeah.
Giving them that knowledge and those skills to be able to identify and avoid these threats, to think critically, to not just click on things, and to be more aware of these tactics that attackers are using all the time.
Yeah. And it's not just about teaching people to like spot phishing emails, is it?
It's bigger than that.
It's about creating that culture of security awareness.
Yeah.
Where people feel comfortable coming forward and reporting suspicious activity, asking questions and even admitting when they've made a mistake.
Right, exactly. We need to we need to create this environment where people aren't afraid to speak up if they think something's wrong.
Right.
Where they're encouraged to learn from those mistakes and where they feel supported, in taking steps to protect themselves and their organization.
Yeah, it's about creating that sense of shared responsibility, right? Where everyone understands that cybersecurity, it's not just the IT department's problem, it's everyone's problem.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all in this together. And that's really where leadership comes in.
Okay.
It's up to the CISO and other, senior leaders to set the tone, to communicate just how important cybersecurity is, and to create a culture where security is truly everyone's priority.
So, we've talked about these overarching themes, but Luis Fernandez also got into some specifics, right? Like he mentioned how cybersecurity is becoming increasingly specialized. He was talking about how different sectors, like transportation, energy, finance, they're all facing these unique cybersecurity challenges.
Right, and that's because as different sectors go through digital transformation, they become more reliant on technology, but they also become more vulnerable to cyber attacks.
Okay.
And these attacks, they're often tailored to exploit the specific vulnerabilities of each sector.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah, so let's take the energy sector, for example.
Yeah.
A cyber attack on a power grid could have devastating consequences, right? It could disrupt electricity supply to millions of people. So attackers might go after, critical infrastructure control systems, trying to gain access and manipulate the flow of electricity.
Oh, wow.
And this requires cybersecurity professionals who have very specialized knowledge of those industrial control systems, the network protocols, the physical security of those power generation and distribution facilities.
Okay, so it's not just about protecting data anymore.
Yeah.
It's about protecting this critical infrastructure that our lives actually depend on.
Exactly. And each sector has its own, its own unique set of challenges and risks.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the financial sector, you might be more worried about protecting sensitive financial data from theft or fraud.
Mm-hmm.
In the transportation sector, you might be more focused on preventing attacks that could disrupt transportation systems or even compromise the safety of passengers.
So it sounds like, cybersecurity professionals really need to kind of like develop this specialized knowledge about the specific threats and vulnerabilities and regulations that are relevant to their particular industry.
Absolutely. It's not enough to just have a general understanding of cybersecurity principles anymore.
Yeah.
You need to have that in-depth knowledge of those specific challenges and best practices within your sector.
So we're kind of moving away from that one-size-fits-all approach to security.
Yeah, definitely.
And more toward these tailored approaches that address the specific needs of each industry and organization.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And this trend toward specialization, it's only going to accelerate as technology keeps evolving and new threats emerge.
And speaking of new threats, Luis Fernandez also talked about cybersecurity, way out there in the realm of space, which is something I honestly had never really considered before.
Feed cybersecurity. Yeah, it's a pretty new frontier, but it's quickly becoming a critical area of concern. Because as we become more and more reliant on all these space-based technologies for communication, navigation, even defense, the consequences of a cyber attack on those systems, they could be severe.
Wow. Can you give me an example?
Yeah, so imagine a scenario where GPS satellites are disrupted.
Oh, wow.
And that causes chaos in transportation and navigation systems. Or a cyber attack on a communication satellite, which could lead to widespread disruptions in internet and phone services.
Yeah, that's kind of scary to think about the potential impact of these types of attacks. What are some of the unique challenges of securing those space-based systems?
Well, one of the big ones is that, those space systems, they're also designed for longevity and reliability, right? Not necessarily for cybersecurity. So they might be running outdated software. They may have limited bandwidth for security updates, and they're physically difficult to access if you need to do repairs or upgrades.
Yeah. So it's like trying to secure a computer that's orbiting hundreds of miles above the Earth.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
And it requires us to think about cybersecurity in a totally different way. We need to develop new strategies, new technologies, new protocols that can address these unique challenges of operating that space environment.
So it sounds like, it's a fascinating area, but a really daunting task.
It is, definitely. But it's also an area of tremendous opportunity for cybersecurity professionals who are looking for a challenge, who want to be on the front lines of innovation.
Luis Fernandez, he also made some interesting observations about the evolving workforce in cybersecurity. He mentioned these new roles like the vigilant and the callow. And he also talked about the need for a more diverse set of skills and perspectives in this field.
Yeah, he thinks that the cybersecurity field needs to attract people from, a much wider range of backgrounds, like people with backgrounds in law, ethics, psychology, even philosophy.
Really? Why is that?
Well, he argues that those disciplines can bring these valuable insights to the table, right?
Right.
Particularly as we try to grapple with, these increasingly complex and interconnected cyber threats. So, for example, a lawyer could help us navigate the legal and regulatory landscape. An ethicist could help us understand the moral implications of our actions, and a psychologist could help us understand how human behavior factors into cybersecurity risks.
So it's not just about those technical skills anymore.
Not at all.
It's about having this broader understanding of the human element, the legal and ethical dimensions, and the societal impact of cybersecurity.
Exactly. The cybersecurity professionals of the future, they're going to need to be well-rounded individuals with a diverse set of skills and perspectives. They'll need to be able to think critically, solve problems creatively, communicate effectively with a wide range of stakeholders.
It sounds like the bar is being raised for what it takes to succeed in this field.
It is, but it's also a really exciting time to be involved in cybersecurity.
Yeah.
The challenges are great, but so are the opportunities.
Well, speaking of challenges, let's circle back to Spain's implementation of the NIS2 Directive. Luis Fernandez, he he expressed some serious concerns about Spain's ability to effectively implement this complex framework.
Yeah, he did. Especially given their history of, bureaucratic delays and their lack of that centralized cybersecurity agency that we talked about earlier.
Right.
Remember that great analogy he used about the American sheriff, the FBI, and the helicopter all vying for control at a crime scene?
Yeah.
I mean, that really highlights the potential for confusion and conflicting priorities in Spain's kind of decentralized approach to cybersecurity.
So it doesn't sound like he's very optimistic about Spain's chances of getting this right.
Well, he's definitely cautious.
Yeah.
But he also acknowledged that the implementation of NIS2 could be a real opportunity for Spain to make some much needed progress.
Okay. How so?
Well, the directive's emphasis on accountability and senior management responsibility, that could be a real game changer. It could force organizations to really take cybersecurity seriously. Mm-hmm. To invest in those necessary resources and expertise, and to develop that more strategic approach to risk management.
So it's kind of like NIS2 is this wake-up call for Spanish organizations to kind of get their act together when it comes to cybersecurity.
It is. It's a chance for Spain to step up, to improve their cybersecurity maturity and to show the world that they're taking this issue seriously.
But it all comes down to execution, right?
Yeah.
The directive itself is just a piece of paper.
Right.
It's up to Spain to make it work.
Exactly. The success of NIS2 is going to depend on how effectively they implement and enforce it.
Yeah.
And how well they can overcome those historical challenges with bureaucracy and fragmented governance.
So it's a wait and see situation, but hopefully Spain will rise to the occasion and use this as an opportunity to kind of elevate their cybersecurity game.
Fingers crossed. Because the stakes are high, not just for Spain, but for the entire EU.
Yeah.
As we become increasingly interconnected and reliant on digital technologies, our collective cybersecurity, it's only as strong as our weakest link.
And that brings us to another key theme that Luis Fernandez, he really highlighted, which is the importance of international cooperation and collaboration in cybersecurity. He believes that no single country can really effectively address these challenges on their own.
He's right. I mean, cyber threats, they don't respect national borders.
Right.
Attackers can operate from anywhere in the world, targeting individuals, organizations, even entire countries. So to effectively counter these threats, we need a global approach. We need to share information, coordinate our efforts, and work together to develop common standards and best practices.
So it's about breaking down those silos, right?
Yeah.
Not just within organizations, but also between countries.
Exactly. We need to be building bridges, fostering trust, and really just recognizing that we're all in this together. A cyber attack on one country is a cyber attack on all of us.
And Luis Fernandez believes that the EU, with its focus on data protection and its commitment to international cooperation, can actually play a leading role in shaping a more secure and resilient digital world.
Yeah, he sees the EU as having this real potential to be a global leader in cybersecurity. To set an example for other countries and to foster a more collaborative and ethical approach to addressing these challenges.
Well, speaking of the EU, let's circle back to that fascinating digital wallet concept that we touched on earlier.
Oh yeah, the digital wallet.
It's a pretty ambitious project with the potential to really revolutionize how we manage our online identities.
Definitely, it's a bold vision, and it's definitely not without its challenges. But if they can pull it off, it could have a major impact on cybersecurity.
Okay.
Making online transactions more secure, reducing the risk of identity theft, and giving individuals more control over their personal data.
Can you walk me through some of the key features of this digital wallet?
Sure. So imagine having this secure digital container, right?
Okay.
On your smartphone or another device. And you can store all your digital identity credentials there, things like your driver's license, your passport, your national ID card.
Okay.
And then you can use those credentials to prove your identity online for all sorts of things, like opening a bank account, accessing government services, maybe even voting in elections.
Wow, that sounds incredibly convenient. But how do they ensure that those digital credentials are secure and can't be forged or stolen.
Yeah, that's the big question, right?
Yeah.
Security is paramount. So the digital wallet is built on this foundation of strong cryptography and secure communication protocols. So the credentials themselves are stored using encryption, and access to the wallet is protected by these strong authentication mechanisms like biometrics or PIN codes.
So it's kind of like a digital vault.
Yeah,
for your identity.
Exactly. A digital vault protected by multiple layers of security.
Okay, that makes sense. And because this digital wallet is based on these open standards, it can be used across different platforms and services, right? So it's a truly interoperable system. Exactly.
So imagine being able to use your digital wallet to, log into your bank account, access your medical records, book a flight, all with that same set of credentials.
That would be amazing. It would simplify our online lives so much. And it would make it a lot easier to manage our digital identities. But what about privacy?
Well, like I said, the EU's approach to the digital wallet, it puts a strong emphasis on privacy and user control.
Okay.
You decide what information you share and with whom. The wallet's actually designed to minimize data collection and only share the information that's absolutely necessary.
Okay.
For that specific transaction or service that you're using. So, for example, if you're using your digital wallet to prove your age, to buy alcohol online, the retailer only needs to know that you're over 18. They don't need your exact date of birth or any other personal details.
So it's about giving individuals more control over their data and preventing that unnecessary sharing of personal information.
Exactly. It's about striking that balance, right? Between convenience, security, and privacy.
Yeah, we've talked about the EU's approach, but Luis Fernandez also mentioned some alternative approaches to digital identity that raised some concerns, right?
Yeah, he did. He specifically mentioned WorldCoin, which is a project that actually involves scanning people's irises.
Right.
To create these unique digital identifiers.
Yeah.
And while the people behind WorldCoin argue that this is a way to promote financial inclusion and prevent identity theft, a lot of critics have voiced concerns about the potential for abuse, particularly in the hands of authoritarian governments.
Yeah, it's kind of unsettling, honestly.
It is.
To think about a private company having access to that kind of biometric data, on a global scale.
It raises a lot of, some fundamental questions.
Yeah.
About data ownership, about control, and that potential for surveillance. And it really highlights that need to carefully consider the ethical and societal implications of all these new technologies.
Yeah, it sounds like we're at this critical moment, right?
Yeah.
In the evolution of digital identity. And the choices we make today are going to have a huge impact on our lives and our societies for years to come.
It's a topic that really deserves our attention. And we need to have these thoughtful debates. We need to have a much broader conversation about the values we want to uphold in the digital realm, the safeguards we need to put in place and the kind of future that we want to create for ourselves and for future generations.
That's a great point. And it kind of brings us back to Luis Fernandez's overall message, which is that we need to have this holistic approach to cybersecurity.
Yes.
Right. One that considers not just the technical aspects, but also the human element, the ethical dimensions, and the business context.
He sees cybersecurity as more than just an IT issue. It's a human issue, it's a societal issue, and ultimately it's a shared responsibility.
So it's about creating this culture, right, of security, of awareness and resilience, where individuals are empowered to make smart decisions.
Right.
Organizations prioritize security as a core value, and society as a whole recognizes the importance of protecting our digital lives.
He's asking us to move beyond, just the purely technical aspects of cybersecurity and embrace a more nuanced approach.
Yeah.
One that considers the human and societal implications of everything we do in this digital realm.
It's like he's challenging us to think differently about cybersecurity, to see it not just as a technical problem that we need to solve, but as this complex and multifaceted issue that demands our attention, our creativity, and our collective wisdom.
And he's reminding us that the future of cybersecurity, it's not predetermined.
Yeah.
It's something that we're all shaping together through our choices, our actions, and our willingness to really engage in these thoughtful discussions about the challenges and the opportunities ahead.
Well said.
His insights offer a valuable roadmap, I think, for navigating the complex landscape of cybersecurity in the 21st century.
Well, not shifting gears a bit, Luis Fernandez also had some pretty fascinating things to say about the role of artificial intelligence in cybersecurity. And, it's a topic that's generating a lot of buzz these days, and for good reason. AI has the potential to really revolutionize how we approach security, both from the perspective of the defenders and the attackers.
Yeah, it's a really exciting and potentially transformative technology, but it's also, as we've talked about, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. On one hand, it can help us analyze these massive amounts of data, automate all those tedious tasks, and detect threats much more efficiently than we ever could before. But on the other hand, attackers can use it to create much more sophisticated and harder to detect threats.
Right. So it's kind of like an arms race.
It is.
Where both sides are constantly trying to outsmart each other using these increasingly powerful AI tools.
It is. And the stakes are incredibly high.
So, we've talked about AI, but let's kind of zoom back in on Spain's implementation of NIS2.
Okay.
Because it seems like there's this real tension between the potential benefits of this directive and the very real challenges of actually putting it into practice in a country like Spain, which has, kind of a history of struggling with these types of EU directives.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Spain has this history of bureaucratic delays and a lack of that centralized cybersecurity leadership, which Luis Fernandez has, he's pointed out a number of times as a potential obstacle.
So do you think that Spain is up to the task?
Well, it's hard to say for sure. It's a complex directive, and Spain's track record isn't exactly stellar. But I do think that there's a real opportunity here for Spain to make some significant progress in strengthening their cybersecurity posture.
So it's kind of a make or break moment.
Yeah, I think so. And the outcome is going to depend on a lot of factors. Their commitment to actually implementing the directive, their ability to overcome those bureaucratic hurdles, and their willingness to really embrace a more proactive and strategic approach to cybersecurity.
Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out.
Yeah, exactly. It's a developing situation.
But I think, one thing that's clear from our conversation with Luis Fernandez is that cybersecurity it's no longer just a technical issue, right? It's become this really complex and multifaceted challenge, and it requires this much more holistic and human-centered approach.
And it requires us to really think differently about security, about the role of technology in our lives, and about the kinds of safeguards we need to put in place to protect ourselves, our organizations, and our society as a whole.
It's almost like a philosophical question now.
It is. Right.
It's not just about, building walls and putting up defenses.
Right.
It's about understanding the nature of risk, the nature of human behavior, and the complex interplay between technology and society.
Well, I think that's a great point to kind of transition to the final part of our deep dive.
Sounds good.
Where we can really explore some of these deeper questions and talk about the implications of all of this for the future of cybersecurity.
So, we've been talking about these big changes in cybersecurity. Luis Fernandez, he had some really interesting thoughts on how the role of the cybersecurity professional is evolving too. It's not just about technical skills anymore.
Yeah, it sounds like he sees a future where those lines between different disciplines are kind of blurring.
Yeah, he actually used the term cybersecurity renaissance. He thinks we need cybersecurity professionals who are more holistic, with a much more well-rounded skill set. I like that, a cybersecurity renaissance.
Yeah, he specifically highlighted the growing convergence between cybersecurity, data protection, and artificial intelligence. And when you think about it, it makes sense, right? Like you're dealing with a data breach, let's say. You need someone who understands the technical aspects of how that breach happened, but you also need someone who understands the legal requirements for notifying the people who were affected, and maybe even how AI could have been used either in the attack or even to try to to mitigate the damage.
So you're saying we need these cybersecurity professionals who are fluent in multiple languages, not just the language of code.
Right. They need to be able to speak the language of law, the language of data privacy, the language of AI, and all while understanding, the ins and outs of the specific industry that they're working in.
So it's a tall order.
It is.
But, he also talked about, maybe attracting more people from the humanities into cybersecurity.
Yeah, he really emphasized that.
Which is not something you hear every day.
I know, right? It might sound kind of surprising at first, but when you consider how complex these cyber threats are becoming, it actually makes a lot of sense. We need people who can think critically, who can analyze information from all these different perspectives, and who can really grasp those ethical and societal implications of technology.
So are you saying that like philosophy majors, history buffs, maybe even literature enthusiasts could have a place in the cybersecurity world?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Cybersecurity, it's not just about, bits and bytes anymore. It's about understanding human behavior, societal trends, and the potential impact of technology on our lives, on our world.
So it sounds like the cybersecurity profession is undergoing this really major transformation.
It is,
and it's creating all these really exciting opportunities for those who are willing to embrace this new way of thinking.
Yeah, imagine being at the forefront of this evolution. Helping to shape the future of cybersecurity and building a more secure and resilient digital society.
Yeah, that sounds pretty inspiring. But Luis Fernandez, he also cautioned about the potential for turf wars, right? As these new roles emerge and those traditional boundaries between disciplines start to break down.
Right. He's worried that we're going to see these conflicts pop up between cybersecurity professionals who come from all these different backgrounds with different areas of expertise.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah. So imagine like a security engineer clashing with a data privacy lawyer over how to handle a data breach.
Okay, yeah.
Or maybe a team of AI specialists struggling to integrate their work with the traditional security operations team.
Yeah, I can see how that could happen. So how do we avoid these potential conflicts? How do we create a more collaborative and integrated approach to cybersecurity?
Well, I think it starts with communication and with a shared understanding of the common goal, right?
Oh, right.
We need to break down those silos, foster a culture of mutual respect, and collaboration. And we really need to recognize that we're all working toward the same objective here. We're all trying to protect our organizations, our communities, and our digital way of life.
Well said. And he also talked about the need for a more strategic and proactive approach to cybersecurity.
Yeah, he's really pushing for this shift away from that reactive mindset. Yeah. Where organizations are constantly just playing catch up with the latest threats.
Right.
He thinks organizations really need to adopt a more proactive and risk-based approach. Anticipating threats, building resilience, and creating that culture of security awareness that we've been talking about.
So it's not just about putting out fires anymore. Right. It's about preventing those fires from starting in the first place. And he believes that this requires a pretty fundamental shift in mindset, right?
Yeah, it's not just about, cybersecurity professionals, but also, senior management and even the board of directors.
So it's really a top-down approach.
Yeah. He argues that cybersecurity has to be a top priority for organizations. It can't just be something that's kind of relegated to the IT department. It needs to be integrated into that overall business strategy. And there needs to be clear lines of accountability. And the culture has to value security.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like he's calling for a pretty fundamental change.
He is.
In how organizations approach cybersecurity.
Yeah, and he thinks that implementing this NIS2 directive could actually be a real catalyst for that change.
Okay.
Especially in Spain.
How so?
Well, the directive, it emphasizes accountability, senior management responsibility, and that risk-based approach that we were just talking about.
Yeah.
So all of that could force organizations to really step up their game and make cybersecurity a core part of how they do business.
So it's almost like NIS2 is like this wake-up call.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
For organizations to get serious about cybersecurity.
It's an opportunity for them to take a hard look at their security posture, identify those weaknesses, and then make the the investments they need to protect themselves from all these threats that are out there.
And it's not just about the the technology and the regulations, is it?
No, it never is.
Luis Fernandez kept coming back to the importance of the human element in all of this.
Right, because people are both our greatest asset and our greatest vulnerability.
Exactly. I mean, we can have the most sophisticated security systems in the world, but if our employees are clicking on those phishing links or falling for those social engineering scams, all those fancy systems really don't do us much good.
Right.
So how do we address this? How do we build a more resilient and security conscious workforce?
Well, I think it really starts with education, right?
Mm-hmm.
And awareness training. We need to teach people about those threats that they face every day, the tactics that attackers are using, and the simple steps that they can take to protect themselves and their organizations.
Yeah, but it's not just about telling people what to do, is it?
No, it's got to be more than that.
It's about helping them to understand why it's so important, how their actions can impact their security, and how they can really become like active participants in building that more secure digital environment.
Yeah, it's about moving beyond that fear-mongering approach and creating a culture where security is everyone's responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Where people feel like they're empowered to make smart decisions, and where they're not afraid to ask questions or to seek help when they need it.
So it's about creating that sense of shared ownership and accountability.
Right.
And he also talked about the importance of building a supportive and inclusive environment.
Yes.
Where people feel comfortable reporting those security incidents, and they're not afraid of being blamed or punished.
Yeah, because if people are afraid to speak up when something goes wrong, it just makes the problem worse. We need to create a culture where mistakes are seen as learning opportunities.
Yeah.
Where people are actually encouraged to report any suspicious activity.
Yeah.
And where security really is everyone's top priority.
So it's about creating that culture of trust and transparency.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he actually believes that this culture shift needs to extend beyond, just the walls of our organizations and into society as a whole.
What do you mean by that?
Well, he's calling for a much broader conversation, a societal dialogue about cybersecurity. And he says it needs to involve not just, technical experts, but also policymakers, educators, community leaders, and everyday citizens. So
you're saying we need to make cybersecurity a mainstream issue, not just something that's kind of like confined to the tech world. Right,
because cybersecurity, it's not just an IT issue anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's a societal issue, and it impacts our lives in countless ways. Mm-hmm. From our personal privacy and financial security to the stability of our critical infrastructure and even the functioning of our democracy.
That's a really good point. And it's a reminder that we're all interconnected, right, in this digital age.
We are.
And that our collective security depends on our individual actions and our willingness to work together.
He's asking us to really take ownership of our digital lives, to be more mindful of those risks that are out there and to make more informed decisions about how we're using technology. Yeah, it's a call to action for all of us to become more engaged, more informed citizens in this digital world. Absolutely. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into Luis Fernandez's insights on the evolving landscape of cybersecurity, and he's really painted this vivid picture of the challenges and opportunities that we face, the technologies that are shaping our world, and that importance of having a holistic and a human-centered approach to security. He's definitely given us a lot to think about. Uh-huh. And I think his perspective is really valuable. He's challenged us to think differently about cybersecurity, to see it as more than just a technical problem to solve, but as a complex and multifaceted issue that demands our attention, our creativity, and our collective wisdom. And he's also reminded us that the future of cybersecurity, it's not predetermined. It's something that we're all shaping together. Right, through our choices, our actions, and our willingness to engage in these important conversations about the challenges and opportunities that are ahead. Well said. It's been a fascinating exploration, and I really hope our listeners have found it as insightful and thought-provoking as we have.
We encourage you to keep exploring these topics, to engage in conversations about cybersecurity with your colleagues, with your friends, with your families, and to stay curious about this ever-changing world of technology and its impact on our lives. Remember, the future of cybersecurity is not something that just happens to us. It's something that we create.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay safe and stay informed.